Hi there, here is Julio Lemos. I am here to introduce myself and talk a little bit about my work, what I've been doing, and to talk about also my recent DVD and CD that I just recorded, and I'm doing some tours around the world with this show, and I would like to talk a little bit about this show. And also about my workshop masterclass that I used to give in the cities that I play, my shows, my concerts, in the tours. I also offer this workshop for those who are interested in learn a little bit more about Brazilian guitar. So I'm originally from Brazil, from a city that's called Goiânia in the state of Goiás, and my work it's all over the Brazilian music in genres such as samba, choro, bossa nova, baião, and so forth. And my final results of my work usually it's a mix of all these genres and rhythm patterns together, and with some mix of Brazilian acoustic guitar, classical line style mixed with this popular rhythm patterns. And so I like to write my songs for not just for guitar but for other instruments such as cello, violin, saxophone, uh, flute, and other instruments when the occasion allows us to join other instruments. So I will talk a little bit about my work, my CD first of all, and starting with my compositions. For example, Vai Meu Samba is a composition that I did some years ago. It's a mix of ideas from the accompaniment over the 7-string acoustic guitar, mixed with some melodies that's traditionally used in sambas, and some part of the song is in a genre, it's in a line, in a style that's mix samba and jazz, and that's super common in the songs of Baden Powell, for example. He used to make some improvisations over the samba jazz, and also we can find this on songs of Hermeto Pascoal, Marco Pereira, and recently Hamilton de Holanda. And I would like to talk about another song that's called Valsa Choro para Garoto. It's a waltz, Brazilian waltz, as the name says. It's a waltz that is a tribute to Garoto. Garoto was one of the main composers of the Brazilian music during the 40s, and he used to work with Carmen Miranda as a guitar accompaniment, and he also was one of the main guitar player that develops the what became after called as bossa nova. He was one of the first guitar player that started mixing some ideas harmonically and melodic speaking from the jazz, mixing with some rhythm patterns from the choro and samba that already happened in Brazil during the 30s or the 20s. So in the 40s he started doing this kind of mix of Brazilian music with jazz, and that was the predecessor from what happened after in the 60s, that's called the bossa nova movement. So another song that I did that's called Ventando na Toca. This is more in the way, in the style of bossa nova, jazz harmonies, the famous 2-5-1, and also the melody is super chromatically and with a lot of chromatism in different parts. And we have two sections over this song, A and B, and a solo of samba jazz style in the middle. And I have another song of my CD and DVD that's called Galo da Madrugada. It's a frevo that was composed by Ian Faquin, a big friend of mine that lives in California, and he did the song on tribute to Spock, who is a guy that's one of the famous frevo player in Brazil, and he did this in tribute to a block group, a huge group that used to play frevo in the carnival on Pernambuco that's called Galo da Madrugada. And I have other songs as Nostalgia and Planando. There are songs that originally was written to be played as a solo guitar, but after I did an extension for cello and flute. So it's a more counterpoint way of composing that I was inspired by Johann Sebastian Bach, because I in the past loved to play his songs, and I did my master degree about Brazilian guitar and the influence of Baroque songs over the Brazilian music. So this is a big influence that I had also in my way of thinking music and composing. So there are a lot of different ideas that you can find in my CD and DVD that's called Julio Lemos Brasil Acústico. You can see the whole entire show in my YouTube channel. You just have to search for this name, Julio Lemos Brasil Acústico DVD. So you're gonna find all the show there, all the songs of the show there, okay? Now we're gonna talk about a little bit about the workshop. I already did some workshops and some tours around the world, especially in the US. I did some tours. I lived in the US during my part of my PhD about Brazilian acoustic guitar that I did originally on Rio de Janeiro at the University of Rio de Janeiro. And also I did a part of that over this in the San Francisco State University, where I lived in California into the year of 2020. So I also did some tours before this part of my life that I lived there in the US, and also in some countries around Europe, especially Spain, in Madrid, on France too, and also in Portugal, in Lisbon and Évora, and also recently in Asia and China. We did a masterclass and did 2 tours there, talking and showing about the Brazilian music. Also in Argentina, I did some workshop there, and we did already 2 tours around some cities in Argentina. I did my work over music starting with 13 years old with rock bands, and after that I start studying classical guitar, what make me think music totally different, and I stop playing rock and roll and start playing Bach, Villa Lobos, and so on. And after that, I start playing Brazilian music, and I just met the way of playing Brazilian music over the 7-string acoustic guitar, which make me be thinking about music in a different way again, and I decided to go deeply over this language and study how it works, how the main guitar players used to do that. So I decided to go as deeply as possible over this. So I did my bachelor work over the Demônios da Garoa group. I did some transcriptions over the bass lines over the acoustic guitar and also the melody, and start making some appointments over how it works, the counterpoint between those lines, which scale, which arpeggio they use to play, and how is the way of thinking over which direction they used to think to play this kind of songs. And then I did my master degree over the song called Samba Urbano by Marco Pereira, who is one of the main guitar players that is still alive, and I have the opportunity to become his friend and to play with him also. He participated in my DVD and CD of my group that's called Brazlian Trio. And after my master degree over his song, I decided to do my doctorate degree over his arrangements, over the original songs from Guilhermando Reis. So what I did is I did some transcriptions from the original recordings of Guilhermando Reis, and the same songs I did the transcription from the arrangements that Marco Pereira did over Guilhermando Reis songs. So this was my research over the work of Marco Pereira. So I also had the big pleasure to play with the main musicians of Brazilian music nowadays. For example, Hamilton de Holanda, Yamandu Costa, Silvério Pontes, Eduardo Neves, and a lot of other important musicians in Brazil. And also Marco Pereira, who was a big partner. I think he's one of the main guitar players live nowadays, and I had the opportunity to play with him in my CD and DVD of my group Brazilian Trio. In the workshop, I talk about the Brazilian music harmony that's found in choro and samba, and I consider this as one of the main roots for all this Brazilian music that happened during the 20th century. So somehow you have the influence especially from the choro harmonies, and also from the samba. So on the workshop I talk about the harmony. I love to talk about the rhythm patterns that you can apply on the guitar, like samba, choro, bossa nova, baião, machixe, maracatu, and so forth. Also, we talk about the variations over these rhythm patterns, how we can do these variations, and how we can apply these rhythm patterns over our own composition. And I somehow show to the students how I did that in my own compositions, how I apply these rhythm patterns. Okay, and for sure I show some examples from classical recordings that use each different rhythm pattern that I talk about in the workshop. So this is a good thing to do, because on this way somehow the student will have the hearing. He will be hearing everything that I talk. He will be hearing on the practice. So he will have a good example from this explanation. So he will have a referential, a good reference to be memorizing what we are being talking, playing, and discussing over rhythm patterns. And I like to talk about the accompaniment over the traditional Brazilian 7-string guitar, acoustic guitar. That's a way of playing Brazilian music that's super original from Brazil. We have a historical line that talks about from where this guitar, 7-string acoustic guitar, came from the Russia and getting to Brazil in the end of the 19th century, and then become spread around the Rio de Janeiro in the beginning of the 20th century. And so it's super important to talk about the way of accompaniment over the 7-string guitar, because we have a lot of bass line that makes some counterpoints over the melodies. So what's super important, and I talk about this on my doctorate degree. I have a chapter that I talk about exactly how the 7-string acoustic guitar can be interfering over the ideas of composition of Brazilian acoustic guitar songs at all. Okay, not just over the Brazilian acoustic guitar accompaniment, but also over how to build arrangements that use those ideas. So it's super nice to understand how it works, the counterpoints that originally started with the influence of Pixinguinha. He influenced one of the main acoustic guitar players that's called Dino Sete Cordas, who influenced a lot of different guitars around Brazil. Mainly one of the greatest one that we love him is Rafael Rabelo. He was with a huge influence from Gino Sete Cordas, and he assumed this over his deployments about Brazilian acoustic guitar. So it's super important for everyone that wants to know a little bit more Brazilian acoustic guitar and also Brazilian music arrangements at all, how it works, the ideas of counterpoint in the bass lines phrase that became from the 7-string guitar acoustic guitar accompaniment. Those are the main subjects that I love to talk about and to play and to show examples using the recordings as reference over my workshop and masterclass. And for sure will be a big pleasure for me to be spreading these informations around the world and with your people in your city and in your festival or university or in your theater. I would love to be sharing all those informations with you guys. So this is a little presentation of my work. I will be super happy to meet you in person soon. Okay, bye bye, and I hope you visit my website juliolemos.net. You subscribe over my YouTube channel, Julio Lemos, on the YouTube, and also follow me on the social media, Instagram and Facebook. You just search for Julio Lemos Guitar. You're gonna find me there. All right. So hope see you soon, and bye bye.